Namaste and good evening. A very warm welcome and a very happy Holi to all our viewers for this 36th online interactive session, Samvada, brought to you by Virat Hindustan Sangam, Karnataka. In our 31st Samvada, we had Dr. B. Mahadevan, Professor of Operation Management, Indian of Bangalore, Management Bangalore, who spoke on inspirational leadership, insight from Gita. A very well articulated and a lively talk on Samvada. And today, we have a very relevant talk, which is of very high interest and affecting our daily lives, by an ex-bureaucrat, Ms. V.S.Chandralekha ji, who will speak on relevance of bureaucracy in the post-liberalization era. A small brief on today's speaker. Chandralekha ji was born in 1947 on July 25th in a place called Dindigal in Tamil Nadu. Her educational qualifications were MA Economics in the year 1968 from the Presidency College, Madras University. Her experience: joined the Indian Administrative Service in the year 1971 and served in the following positions: Sub-Collector, Chengalpet and Charan Mahadev from 1973 to 1975. General Manager, License Cooperation, Deputy Secretary, Food from 1976 to 1980. District Collector, South Arcot and Madurai from 1980 to 1985. Director, Rural Development and Secretary to the Government, Rural Development from 1985 to 1988. Chairman, Women's Development Corporation from 1988 to 1990. Chairman and Managing Director, Tamil Nadu Industrial Development Corporation from 1991 to 1992. The current position that she holds: resigned from the IAS after 21 years of service and joined the Janata Party. State President of Janata Party, Tamil Nadu from 1992 till its merger with the BJP. Presently, she is the State President of the VHS in Tamil Nadu. I welcome Chandralekha ji for this lovely program. I'm now joined by Gopi ji, our General Secretary, Tejas, our back-end main person who handles the complete program, and our co-host, Venkat Sudhindran. I now invite and request our guest, Ms. V.S. Chandralekha ji, to start this evening's program with a talk on relevance of bureaucracy in the post-liberalization era. Over to Ms. Chandralekha ji. Thank you.
Thank you, Mukul, Gopi, Tejas, and Venkat Sudhindra. And wish all the viewers a very happy Holi. I'd been a bureaucrat for about 21 years, so I thought I'll share some of my thoughts with you all. Generally, when we talk about the bureaucracy, we always say it with a derision and with a little bit of irritation and anger. There's a lot of difference in saying Chandralekha is a retired IAS officer and Chandralekha is a bureaucrat. Then I know, okay, somebody is very angry with me. Okay, then what is bureaucracy? Bureaucracy is a system or arrangement to maintain uniform authority within and across institutions to carry on a day-to-day administration. It's also a system of government by a large number of officials who are not elected, but who are well educated, and they have a permanent position in the government, so they don't have to bother about their future till their retirement, so long as they conduct themselves properly. They are not dismissed or something like that. And then it is a system characterized by specialization of functions, adherence to fixed rules, and a hierarchy of authority. When I say hierarchical administrative structure, you all think only that it is possible, it is there only in the government, because that is what we generally see. But this is a term that can describe the administrative structure in the private sector also. Any businesses, any non-governmental organizations, colleges, hospitals, wherever you have got more than one person and an administration has to take place, then the people who are managing it are all bureaucrats. Even in a family, the head of the family will be treated as a bureaucrat by the wife and the children, because they can also say, my father is very inflexible, he's all the time coming up with rules and regulations, so he is also a bureaucrat. So by birth, all of us are bureaucrats in some way or the other. The essential characteristic of a bureaucracy is a complex multi-level administrative hierarchy, a departmental specialization, strict division of authority at different levels, then standard set of formal rules and operating procedures. It has policies and procedures that are inflexible and provides consequences to those who do not follow this procedure. In an ideal, bureaucracy is not influenced by interpersonal relationships or political alliances. The hierarchical structure of a bureaucracy also ensures that the bureaucrats who administer the rules and regulations, they have a clearly defined task. You don't interfere in somebody else's work. You know your allotted space of work is available for them. This clear hierarchy defines who has the authority and how much. This clear chain of command allows management to closely monitor the organization's performance and deal effectively with problems as and when they arise. And bureaucracies tend to demand employees with specialized educational background and expertise relating to the agencies or departments to which they are assigned. Along with ongoing training, this expertise helps to ensure that the bureaucrats are able to carry out their tasks consistently and effectively. In addition, advocates of bureaucracy argue that bureaucrats tend to have higher levels of education and personal responsibility when compared to non-bureaucracies. That is why even in bureaucracy is unavoidable in any circumstances, whether it is post-liberalization or pre-liberalization. Even US, they never had bureaucracy. They had a spoiled system earlier. So whoever came to power, their party workers and their own friends, etc., were appointed and the positions were auctioned. But then they found that it was a very inferior way of handling things. So they gave up, and US has got today its own bureaucracy in different levels. While government bureaucrats, while they don't make the policies and rules they implement, they nevertheless play an integral part in rule-making process by providing essential data, feedback, and information to the elected lawmakers. Bureaucracy also benefits society by creating structures that help to keep people safe and productive. It creates rigid policies and laws that must be followed to safeguard the well-being of the society. If problems are discovered, then it becomes possible to correct them. Why it is hated? Because the impersonal nature of the bureaucracy is often criticized, but this wholeness has a design. Applying rules and policies strictly and consistently reduce the chances that some people will receive more favorable treatment than others. By remaining impersonal, the bureaucracy can help to ensure that all people are treated fairly without friendships or political affiliations influencing the bureaucrats who are making the decisions. Due to these rigid rules and procedures, bureaucracies are often slow to respond also to different situations. Due to these rigid rules and procedures, they are often slow to respond to unexpected situations and slow to adapt to changing social conditions. In addition, when left with no latitude to deviate from the rules, frustrated employees can also become defensive and indifferent. And the red tape is also another problem with bureaucracy, because there are so many levels and sometimes they come up with all kinds of unnecessary procedures which leads to delay. So these are the problems of bureaucracy and the nature of the bureaucracy. And from what I have told you, you will realize that this problem is not peculiar to a bureaucracy. By bureaucracy, you understand government agencies. But this can happen in any large organization, whether it's in a private sector, whether it is in a non-governmental agency, or any institution for that matter. It could be a hospital, it could be a school. Now, in the liberalized era, certain new factors have come up. That is, certain policies, certain things which were not in the realm of the government earlier were not thought of, but they are there. Like, for example, you have to now deal with climate change, there is renewable energy, then global trade negotiations, information technology, and problem solving. So for all this, the bureaucrats, whether they are ready, so people say these things cannot be handled by a general administrator, so we need to bring in specialists into the thing. I agree, but then you should understand you can always bring in a specialist to handle a particular problem. Because even in bureaucracy, what happens? Only at the secretariat level, etc., you have the IAS officers, IPS officers, people from other services. But then today, many of them are also professionals, in the sense they have medical degrees, they have got engineering degrees, etc. And once you are selected to the service, you are also given a special training in your area in which you are going to work. So the officers are also specialized. So in the post-liberalization area, what should happen is to be more responsive and to understand the complex nature of the new area of specialization. Officers should be constantly trained. Now today what is happening, your officer, according to me, the problem with the bureaucracy today is, an officer today I will be doing one work, tomorrow I will be posted to a job to which I am unrelated. So like, for example, in Gujarat, if you take, the officers, they move in a particular set of related departments. Like example, an officer will be specializing, not only he will be Secretary Agriculture, or he could be in animal husbandry, or he could be in fisheries, like that, all related areas, or rural development, like that. The industries man will be similar, like small industries, medium industries, like that. So over a period of time, they do acquire the kind of specialization that is required for the job. And the officer being impersonal and objectivity is possible. But today, of course, all these things are getting diluted. What I say is, see, a few years ago, at least when we all joined the service, etc., there was a lot of enthusiasm about the service, and when you took pride in your service, because we were all trained like that by our senior officers. There was a spirit de corps there, and we were told how to behave ourselves, how to be responsive to the public need, etc. But today, that kind of a relationship between the senior and the junior officers is missing. The senior officers are not really guiding the youngsters. So the value system is today diminishing. I'm not saying that every civil servant today is like that, but I do see a lot of difference between the attitude of the officers of today and the previous era. And another problem that is today being faced by officers is with this lot of now economic decisions need to be taken. And when you're taking a decision, an economic decision, there are many decisions, you have to select one of them. But the officers are being taken to task for that, because what happens either by the judiciary or by the media. But according to me, the protection should be given to the officer. If it is an purely economic decision, the decision goes wrong, you should not hold the officer responsible. But if there is corruption, if there is favoritism, certainly that officer should be pulled up. So these are the things if they are improved, and we also give the proper regular training to these officers, They can manage any situation, and they will rise up to the occasion. Because service has proved that today's many of the major calamities and all, they're handled very well by the bureaucracy. Without a bureaucracy, I don't think any system can function. A politician will not know how to implement his policy. He may say, okay, I want this to be done, but how that has to be done and what are the rules that have to be framed, etc., he wouldn't know. So a bureaucracy is always, you may call it a necessary evil or whatever you want to say, but bureaucracy is the necessity of the society and of the government. That is my view. If you want any question, I'm free to answer questions from my experience.
Thank you, madam, for all the details about it. Coming to the question point, the bureaucracy you mentioned about, when did it really started? Did it start from the colonial era when the Britishers were here? Did they start the bureaucrats and the so-called district authorities or something like that? And did it evolve to today's bureaucrat?
Of course, bureaucracy had been there from Chandragupta Maurya's time, because Arthashastra mentions how the corporation, I mean the town committee was appointed, etc. All the kings have also said that is there. But then, as far as the modern bureaucracy is concerned, yes, you had the Indian civil service after the, I think it came about after Queen Victoria's proclamation of, after the, it was taken over from the company. After that, the civil service came. At that time, it was called the Indian Civil Service. They basically brought these officers through a competitive exam, and they were appointed to different levels in districts, and then they rose to higher position. Basically, they started off for collecting the revenue for the company or for the government. But later, they came into all other areas. But one thing I must say, I admire, these officers, they came all the way from initial stages. Later, a lot of Indians also came into this. They came from London. They sat here and they studied very meticulously our society. We have, when we go to districts, we are asked to read, first thing we have asked to read is every district has got a district gazetteer. This district gazetteer gives the history of the district. If you see, they tell you, what kind of communities were there at that time, what castes were there, what were their practices. You'll be surprised how they collected all this information. Very interesting about the history, why this happened. They talk about different communities, how the Brahmins behaved, how did the non-Brahmins behave, and why it came about, what was a bright, little things which we don't know. It reads like a novel. And they studied the society very minutely, because they used to go and stay in villages. So camping today, officers, we just go, we have a car, we go, hardly spend a few minutes and we come away. But those days it was not like that, if they went to a village, they camped there. That is why you will find all these travelers, bangla and all that, wherever, in remote areas also. And they will stay there for a few days. There was a cook there, he cooked for them, and the whole day they spent talking to people and sitting right their problems, etc. And the kind of system they evolved, amazing. When I was training, we have to go to the village. We have a village training. You'll be surprised, for a small, tiny village, there were 24 accounts in Tamil Nadu that village officer had to maintain. 24. And including that one was statistics. One was on statistics, and I went to a village called Brahmadesham in North district, very near to Katpadi. And that register, about 100 years before register also, that officer, because they're traditional posts, the Karnam, village hitman and all that. And so traditional, he was maintaining that records very meticulously. So I was very interested in the statistical record he maintained. That statistical record mentions what are all the crops grown. And you found that village had diversified cropping system, totally self-sufficient. But later when I went there, they were growing only ragi. and some rice. The entire system had changed. So you could study how the society had evolved from that kind of a record. They maintained a record for, there were many village irrigation ponds and tanks, and how much water came into it. They had a rain gauge. They said how much, so that you had to know how much rain you received, so that you will know how much tax you have to collect. If the rains had failed, and your record shows there were no rains and the tank did not receive, then they were given a remission. Because land revenue was the main revenue at that point of time. 24 records. And at every Jamabandi, once a year it will be conducted, they had to complete, and like audit department, you have to complete your accounts and then submit it to government. So wonderful system, and how an office has to be run, how a file has to be maintained, which file for how long you have to keep, all these details. And it was not a time when you had computers and all that, but you should see the village records, who owns which land and how that land is transferred. All these details will be there in it.
Okay.
And ICS, of course, was succeeded by IAS, successor service.
And hello. Okay, man. Thank you, man. And coming to the other question, in modern day, most of the bureaucrats, we heard that they interact with a lot of NGOs in and around areas. So these NGOs could be local or could be externally funded or something. So how is the interaction? But how the NGOs can influence the bureaucrat?
I don't think that's a very correct position. Because I'll tell you, NGOs are not there uniformly, they are not distributed all over an area. Some districts have NGOs, some they don't have. Some NGOs are good. Many of them are frauds. So that's not very correct. I had also interacted with many NGOs, and I had given the work to some very good NGOs who did excellent work. But you will never know about them because, they don't believe in publicity, and they do real sincere work, like Gandhigram in Dindikal. And one Krishnammal Jagannathan, I think he was given a President's Bharat, she got one of those Padma Shris or something like that. And they were Gandhians, and Bhutan movement, they had all done a good work. I won't say that the NGOs influence IAS officers.
Okay. Thank you for that. And other question is, the bureaucrats get trained well at the time of induction program, and they come into the service, and we have noticed of late, like the many are like, if not anti-Hindu, at least anti-Hindutva. Why is that, ma'am?
It goes back to the Nehruvian days, and I remember when I was when I was a trainee. The basic environment was more leftist-oriented bureaucracy, because our the director and the other staff whom we had in the academy, not the director so much, but others like joint directors, deputy directors, who were also from different cadres they had come, they were very much left-oriented. For example, Nadalla's father, who is Nadalla? Nadella.
Microsoft.
Correct. His father, B. N. Uganda. He was an IAS officer from Andhra Cadre. He was our one of our deputy directors. A very good officer, but highly left-oriented. And if you say anything right-wing, they will get very upset. And many of those days, if you remember, many of these IAS officers, they came from St. Stephen's College and things like that. And many of them are students of K.N. Raj. And so their mentality was like that. They were left-oriented and, that pseudo-secularism, etc. So that has seeped into the system. But today it's not like that. But what happens? Most of your governments are like that. Today, if you take, except even BJP, except BJP ruled states, in all other states, if you take, the government is generally anti-Hindu. And so the officers are also like that. Not all of them, I will say, because that doesn't enter into your mind when you're doing something like that. But in HR and CE department and things like that, they're implementing the rules. They can't, an officer cannot overnight change already the rules system is there. Within that framework only you have to work.
Okay.
But I can't generally say they are anti-Hindu. Yeah.
Sudhindra, please go ahead. Venkat.
Yeah. Hello, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. So I have a few questions. The Indian Civil Service actually was the predecessor for the Indian Administrative Service, and
Yes.
Sardar Patel gave the constitutional guarantee for the Indian Civil Service, and he made it Indian Administrative Service, and he called it steel frame of the country. And he also said that bureaucrats need to have an independent voice. Today, do we see that independent voice? I can give you a lot of examples, like the harassment that is going on against the IAS officers at high levels by the political bosses that forces them to keep quiet in the post-liberalized era.
They don't
like
keep
example-
quiet. No, officers don't keep quiet. See, let me tell you something. There are a few officers who get very close to the political masters and willing to participate in all their illegal activities. Okay. But they are few. But you get to know about them because they are holding the most prestigious positions are held by them. But most of the honest officers who don't bother, they're all in positions which are not so very significant. You don't get to know about them. Okay. So as a civil servant, in my own experience, I have never had that kind of a problem except with Jayalalitha. But I had worked under two chief ministers. I had worked with Kalingar and I had worked with M.G. Ramachandran. And they, in fact, liked my audacity and telling them very frankly, no, this can't be done and this should not be done. Of course, later they may take a different view, but I had the privilege of telling them, no, this is not the way to do it, and they appreciated it. But today, political masters are not like that. So what happens is that officer will be transferred. Okay, I don't mind a transfer. I don't mind the consequences of my action. For example, in my TITCO, when I was chairman of TITCO and had this problem with Jayalalitha, I knew my decision will get me transferred from that very prestigious position of chairman, managing director of Tamil Nadu Industrial Development Corporation. I knew the consequences, and I held on to my stand. And I went as commissioner of historical research and archives. And the governments have created, it's a punishment post in the sense, I'll tell you. There are a number of positions they have created in government where there is not much of a work, like commissioner of disciplinary proceedings, State Farms Corporation, and historical research. See, historical research once upon a time had done a good work, but then the officer should have an aptitude for it. I am not cut out for that kind of a job. You see, historical research, sitting archives, what is done and things like that. I am more a field level worker who would like to do policy reformulations, etc. So that is not given, but you should be prepared for that.
Ma'am,
So
I have this. Yeah, go ahead, ma'am.
There is a quid pro quo. So there are many officers who don't worry about that. They do the job, and the political master doesn't like it. They are very happily, they'll say, okay, I'll go to wherever you post me.
So the independent voice is still there, but it is not public.
And it is done, it is recorded in your file, which doesn't, of course, it is not a matter of public scrutiny. It is called a note file, in which you do record your objections to the But if the minister overrules it, you can do nothing about it. Then you implement it.
So the legislature has the hold over the executive here.
Certainly, because they are only responsible for the people. No, they will say after 5 years, I have to face the music, not the civil servant.
Ma'am, but the bureaucrats are called as the permanent opposition in for the government. So they should tell out, right? Like if something is going wrong, like say the Manrega, it's a large-scale open system of maladministration.
Sorry, I will not say that. You can't, you see, that's what I'm saying. You all go by what the press says, you take one item and talk about it. No, REGA is a very good scheme, but then it could be implemented in a better way. Like I had, at that time it was called National Rural Employment Program, NREP. RL or the National Rural Employment Program it was called. Now the name as Guarantee Program, something they have changed. But we could effect a lot of changes through that amount that came. Like I took up housing for scheduled castes because they always lived in huts. So I said 50% of the funds, because government used to say 30% of the funds should be spent for scheduled castes, but most of the officers didn't know how to spend it because you couldn't give it for land, they were landless laborers, etc. So I said it will go for housing. And in the housing, they said the thing was 50% should go for labor and only 50% for material. And in a house, material costs much more than the labor. So what I said was the brick, etc., will be produced by another group of people in the village itself. And that thing, so I am generating employment through making brick also.
Wow.
And we were able to do it. And also that I also insisted that along with that house, there should be a toilet also should be built into it. Of course, my successor, he said, anyway, these women are not using the toilet, so why waste money? So he cut that portion. That's a different matter. But then we were able to do a lot of good work with that money. Everywhere there will be, they say, misuse. You cannot blame it on the system. Misuse is done in every situation. In hospitals, don't doctors misbehave. In a private sector, it doesn't take place. Everywhere it takes place. So, REGA is a very good scheme. Only thing is, it needs to be fine-tuned. For example, I've always been saying in REGA, now one problem with REGA now is, many of these people, they just sign and then they take every day, whatever is that, 130 rupees, 140 rupees. In the family, there are 4 people, they get about 500 rupees, they don't do any work. And it is interfering with agricultural work. Many of the agriculturalists are not able to get labor on time for various agricultural activities. So I have been saying that this scheme should be done in such a way that the marginal farmer, the small farmer, for him, let us say he is employing 10 workers, agricultural workers. He could be subsidized with this REGA money. He will extract work from them, no? So you are also helping the marginal farmer, and this should be done only in off-season. So that, you know, during the agricultural season, the laborer is available for agricultural work, and the off-season, when they are not having work, this should be used. These are the technical aspects that should be handled.
Ma'am, I'll ask you one direct question. What are the discretionary powers that an IAS officer would have that he or she can use her complete agency to undertake that action? Like say that nobody interferes in that particular decision. There should be some discretionary power that should be left with the IAS that political bosses cannot question. Nobody can question. Is there something like that?
Like that all politicians are not bad also. You see, there are many politicians who appreciate your work also, and they give you a lot of free hand to do whatever you want. Like that I had enjoyed with Mr. M.G. Ramachandran. So it's not like that. And there's not a discretionary power. You can also be flexible in manipulating the rules.
Like?
You know, so that you can help somebody.
Ma'am, I can ask you one question. I'll give you a practical example, but this is something that I'm coming to the third question, but a very important question. Let us say that you are a district collector.
Okay.
Again, And instead of Mr. MGR, Dr. Subramanian Swamy is the Chief Minister.
Mm.
And I am his associate. I am in his good books. And you are my district collector. Now I
And
go to him.
what is your position?
I am just a party worker. I am
Okay,
just in
okay.
Janata Party. Assume that I am in Janata Party. But I am in his good books. I say that there is a government land of 100 acres near, say, Vellore district or Kadlore district. And you are the collector of North Orkha district. And you have been collector. So, can I ask if the Chief Minister gives a direction to allot that government land to me? Is it mandatory for you to allocate it to me, irrespective of who I am? I'm just a party worker, but I'm in his good books.
No, it is basically, first of all, nobody can be allotted 100 acres of land. I will object to it.
Okay, ma'am, let's say 10 acres. I want to start a school. Let us say I want.
No, if it is passed through a proper government order and it is a land which can be given for such a purpose, yes, it can be done.
Okay, so
Otherwise,
so if there is, like, say that
for
I
example,
demand.
I will give you something which happened. You were also asking about anti-Hindu. This will combine this. I was collector of South Arcot. There is a very famous temple called Tiruvahindipura. It's a Vishnu temple. For that temple, about 400 years ago, somebody had donated about 2 acres of land for conducting, to use the proceeds coming from that land to celebrate a function called Masimagam Festival. Now, convent, a Christian convent that was running there, they were eyeing this land. Before that, what had happened is the government had taken over forcibly that land, of course, paying some compensation, saying the government wanted to build a teachers training school there. They had acquired that land, but they had not put it for that use at all. It was lying vacant. It was a temple land. Then this convent wanted to have that land. So they wrote to the collector that we want to expand our school. We want this land. It should be given to us. And the collector overnight passed an order because he was a Christian. And he gave the land to them. So when I became a collector after 4-5 years after this incident. And I came, the temple authorities, I mean, the devotees of the temple, they came and told me, this is what is happening. This land should not be given. So I said, okay, yes, this is wrong. So what I did was, they had also not come up with any structure and all that. So I sent a notice to the convent saying this land should come back to government. They refused to accept the notice of the government when the Tahsildar went there. So I said, there is something called Utti Sarvasera. That means you just paste it on their wall. They don't accept, you just paste it on the wall, then that is equivalent to that you have done the job. So I said, go and do it there. So they went to, and I took over the land and immediately handed it over to the temple. So this convent went on appeal. They went to the education secretary. He happened to be a Christian. And then he said my order was wrong and he again restored it. But then I told this temple people, you go to the court. And I recorded my view. I said, the government had earlier taken this land for constructing a government training school, but they didn't do it. So they had no business to give that land back to a convent. They should have, if they are not using that land, according to the Land Acquisition Act, land should go back to the original owner after taking back the original money that was given. So I said that is why after 10 years, government had not done anything about that land. So it should go to the rightful owners. I gave it back. You know what happened? Though the government said, ultimately court upheld my order. And the land went back to the temple.
So ideally, you as a bureaucrat.
pro-Hindu. At that time, if I'd asked me whether pro-Hindu or this thing, I would have said, no, I'm neutral. But then I did that.
You followed the due process of law and you retrieved it back to the right place. But is that happening in the current context? Thousands of acres of temple lands without the collector's notice, without the district magistrate's notice. How could somebody? That's what that's why I gave my example, that if I am in the good books of Mr. Swami, then I can bypass Dr. Chandralekha IAS and I can get whatever land I want, wherever I want, how much ever I want.
You can, but then the people are vigilant, like this Tiruvayindipuram temple people. You go to the court, ultimately you can win.
Yeah, ma'am, I knew this because it cannot be possible because the entire district administration, the revenue, the land record maintenance, the law and order maintenance, the cooperative banks, everything comes under the control of the district collector. So without his signatory approval, you cannot allot some land, government land, to someone. So it means that the bureaucracy has worked in tandem with the government. Can I not say this?
You see, you are taking one or two cases and saying this is the general practice of the bureaucracy. That is where I am telling you it's not so.
Ma'am, thousands of acres.
For that, no, not all. See, suppose the government passes an order, this land is given, you can't do anything about it. HRNC says, yes, I don't require this land, that can be given. So what do I do? See, for every decision, I may not agree with the government decision. For every decision, I can't say I'm leaving my job and leaving. I can only fight for the rights. Up to a point. Beyond that, if the government, your due process by passing a government order, they say it is taken over, I can't do anything about it. So I can only fight wrong. According to rules, this cannot be done. That's all I can say.
Ma'am, what question, like why is there too much concentration of power with the IAS? Like the most powerful ones are concentrated with the IAS. There are like 23 services, but
no, not correct. No. There are today in different departments, the people from other services are also holding the position. From IAS, a lot of IPS officers are all coming into Home Secretary, Home Department, Ministry, and all that. It's not true.
It is not the power, but rather the funds that come to a district magistrate is nowhere in comparison to what Indian.
No. Money doesn't come to the district collector directly. Money comes only to different departments. Collector only coordinates the whole thing. In fact, you can never say this is the power of a collector. The power of the collector comes from the personality of the collector. I have no control over the various departments. If it's a PWD engineer, there will be an executive engineer, there will be a highways engineer. I don't have a direct control over him as such. But my personality, the way because they are all at a lateral power, there's not hierarchy there. The hierarchy is only your Tahsildar, revenue inspector, your sub-collectors, etc. But these people don't work under me in that sense. So I have to coordinate and take them along with me. That's why it's a very, very unique position.
Ma'am, that is my final question is here. Like, is there any responsibility or some kind of a work of a district collector or an IAS officer that can be outsourced, or he can be relinquished for like certain cases? Say, for example, grievance redressal. Grievance redressal every day, I guess there is 1 hour or 2 hours of grievance redressal for every district at collectorate. So can there be, like, for the sake of relevance in the modern era, is there something that you see that the IAS...
See, the matter directly comes under the purview of a collector. It is handled by him. Otherwise, he sends it to other departments only. For example, it rates road construction or something, it is immediately sent to the highways department.
Okay, ma'am. So
Yeah.
Thank you,
So,
madam.
Chandralekha ji, I had
On the
one
lighter
question.
note- Okay.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Please go
Go
ahead,
ahead.
Tejas.
No, I had a question. Currently, do you think anything reforms we can do on the IS, like officers who are IS officers in the front? Like sometimes we have not all the officers, but some of the officers wherein they think about the post retirement and they are inclined towards the politics, or they are inclined towards the freebies which they get from the government post retirement. So and because of this we see that some of the times corruption inside the bureaucracy, like we have a few politicians like who have used like that. So do you think any reforms on this front from the IS side should be done actually?
I think
You
not
see,
only
one
IAS, I
thing,
think. Okay.
every service. See, what happened was when I was in the service, when we all sat for the exam, the maximum age limit was 24. It's 24. If you cross 24, you can't write the exam. Today, up to 32, 35, also it is allowed, different communities and things like that. They always used to tell us in the academy, only when you're young, you can be molded. The training, etc. Because you are at that time, you are very idealistic. You just come out of your college, So you are very idealistic. And we all joined the service thinking we are going to do some great things to the people. We are going to serve society, that. So you can be molded at that age. At 32 and 35, most of them would have already done some other job. It is just a job for them. It's not a career. They don't come with that kind of a vision and ambition. They become very rigid in their ways. This is one thing which has spoiled the services, according to me. There has to be, at a younger level, 24 should be the maximum age limit where they should enter. One.
Ma'am, you're being
Yeah.
very rigid here. 24 is like too low now.
You mean? No, earlier
Yes.
we all passed the age of 24. Many of us were 21, 23. When we took our exam, we were just 23. I had entered the service when I was 23. Many of us were like that. Today you join at 32, you are set up your mind, you want money, you are already married. Okay, now how I can make money here? You are like that. That is why you always see the difference between a direct recruit and a promoting. A promoting will be very rigid.
That's true.
You will always see between the state officers, the state recruited officers and the IAS officers, you will always see the difference. It's because of this.
Please go ahead, madam. You're continuing with the topic about
Which your character should be maintained. The idea of All India service was that in every state there will be a combination of officers. You don't belong to your state alone. There will be somebody from Andhra, there will be somebody from Meghalaya who will be part of that. So there was the cultural mix was there. And secondly, officers were shared between the state and the center. So you work for some time in the state and then you go to the center. You know how a central government works. And while you are at the central government, you know what are the problems of a state government. Each state has its own problem. So, a situation which is relevant to Tamil Nadu will not be so for Meghalaya. So an officer from Tamil Nadu will be able to give that input. Now what has happened is, many officers, particularly from the southern region, they don't opt to go for Delhi. So that interaction and then ideas is not taking place. And the state civil service officers are holding most of the good positions. There is something called cadre positions. So state government has got the control. A cadre post can be held only by an IAS officer. While he can be posted to a non-cadre post also, but only an IAS officer can hold a cadre post. So what Tamil Nadu has given, all the unimportant posts like this Commissioner of Disciplinary Proceedings, as I told you, State Farm Corporation, etc., they have all put in the cadre positions.
So they are harassed. That's what I exactly told you.
To harass, exactly. So the central government should insist what are the positions that could be called as a cadre post. There should be a strict
demarcation.
Demarcation.
Yes, Gopiji.
Madam, on the lighter note, how was it working with N.G. Ramchandranji I mean, and Jayalalitha ji, and any comments about Shashikala ji? So if you want to make it.
You see, that M.G. Ramachandran, he gave us a free hand, particularly if he knew you are a good officer and you were honest, and he took your ideas. Many a time I told him, no, this can't be done. They agreed. In fact, when we introduced, they wanted to change this traditional position of this village heads, they want to take over, and then some gave a wrong idea to them and all that. And my chief secretary said that this question should not be raised in the meeting because CM had already taken a decision. I said, no, he might have taken that decision, but my opinion, I will say that this is a wrong decision. I was the only person to talk in that meeting. This is a wrong decision. It will have serious consequences. So we have taken such decisions, and sometimes to cut the red tape also we are given suggestions which I had taken. He was a great person to work with. But Jayalalitha, see, this is what happens when you are not being actually a grassroots level politician. And you are in that position because you're somebody like, you are somebody's wife, somebody's sister, etc. You have a lot of sense of insecurity. She had that. She thought if I tell her, listen, this is wrong, this is not the way this should be done, this will bring a bad name to government. She thought I am saying that you are a bloody fool, you don't know anything. I know everything, I am an IAS officer, you don't know anything. That's not the way. It's my right to guide my political boss. Tell him what is right, what is wrong. In fact, I told MGR, I was the one who conducted the Panchayat elections after 20 years. After 71, there were no Panchayat elections. So I was the first one to conduct it in 84. And they wanted it, all the political masters, they wanted ministers and all, that even for village Panchayat, you should have party affiliation. I told MGR, no, you should not have a party affiliation for local body elections. After all, what policy is going to initiate? No. He has to see that the roads are maintained, that the electric lamps are burning. So the villager will feel happy to go to a non-political person. So he may belong to a party, but he should not have that badge that he represents DMK or ADMK, whatever it is. He agreed. So political masters who are very savvy and who are very confident of their support from the people, like MGR, they treat you well and they will take your advice. Subramaniam Swami will be like that. But people who don't have knowledge, who don't have any, who come suffer from inferiority complex, Jayalalitha, under them working is a problem.
Ma'am, I have one. Yeah, go ahead, Gopiji.
Any comments on the Shashikala ji, ma'am? Yeah, I just want to leave it. Is it?
Like, what do you want to know about her?
There are some information that you are crucial in bringing her to the forefront or something. Is that true, ma'am?
Yeah, it is true in the sense that I introduced her to Ms. Jayalalitha because her husband was my public relations officer. He was a very good officer. Natarajan was an excellent officer. Shashikala is also a very nice person. And unnecessarily, people are blaming her, and when they should actually blame Jayalalitha. The decision maker is Jayalalitha. And they were saying, they want to paint that Jayalalitha was a very brilliant girl. If she's a brilliant girl, then she should take the decision, no?
Yes, ma'am.
She should allow an extra constitutional authority. But most of the time, she will not take the decision and she will ask Shashikala, you go and shout at that minister or do this or something. So she was only carrying on the errands of Jayalalitha.
Basically, she wanted to make sure that there is no accountability or things don't reach her.
Reach whom?
Jayalalitha.
No. It is Shashikala didn't prevent any information from reaching out to Jayalalitha. But Jayalalitha was not keen to get this information. She would not meet people. She was always like that. Because in film plan, it is like that. No, you are not supposed to see people. Then, you know, your popularity goes down. So you have to act.
Oh,
You know, you should only be rarely be seen. Then only your that aura will be maintained.
ma'am,
And basically, she was a very lazy person. She was very arrogant. She had total contempt for her ministers. So she didn't want to interact with them. Even officers. She will give an order, and the next day she will change the order depending upon who gave her the money. So we didn't know how to proceed.
some people need to be rewarded for working under Jayalalitha.
They have been very well rewarded.
Let's
Thank
not
you,
talk
ma'am.
about that.
Chandralekha ma'am, I have a question for you. Can
Yes,
I come in,
Hitesh.
Gopi? Since you've done 21 years of your service with the government of Tamil Nadu, and then you've been politically active towards Janata Party, what advice do you have for the youngsters who want to jump in to become an IAS officer?
Even today, in spite of all its shortcomings, I would say it's a great service to be in. Gives you a lot of scope to serve the society. I don't think any other position will give you that kind of a scope. You know, at a very young age to go and work for your people. Ultimately, whatever development can take place in a country, all that should reach to your grassroots. You know, and it is those people who need to be helped. And no other service gives you that opportunity.
Just another small little extension.
Well, really want to be something, want to contribute something to the country, should enter the services, be good officers, and later, you know, after you gain your experience, you want to get into politics or something, get in. That will give you a very good
I have just one question, that's it. We are speaking so much about police reforms. What is it that we need to have an IAS reforms? Reforms in the bureaucracy.
Yeah, see, that's what I said. See, constantly with changing times, your training, etc., should be there to see that you are conducive to that kind of an environment. That is very, very necessary. That is why I always say some of the retired officers criticize the youngsters. I say, see, our times were where certain things which I could do boldly, today he cannot do it. So the reform is very necessary. Like how to make them independent, at the same time responsive to the needs of the people. They should know how to do their job. You know, if, for example, you know, suddenly I was asked to, I was Civil Supplies Corporation General Manager, and the Janata Party had just then come to power. So what happened was we used to have a whole lot of stocks, food grains, under the ration system. And when Janata Party said there will be no zones, etc., the food prices came down and we had excess stock and we didn't know what to do with that, and government gave us a permission to export, and I had no experience in export except recording export, and I had to do how to do shipping, how to draw the contract, and how to manage the you know, the shipping agency. I went, sat down in Port Trust of Chennai, and I got hold of some of the handlers and had a discussion with them. I learned everything whatever was needed, and we did an excellent job. And people were saying, without knowing this job, how did you do it? I said, yes, I learned it. So that commitment has
Thank
to
you
be
very
there.
much.
So you learn.
Thank you.
See, no one job will give you that you can handle everything. So it should be any specific skill that is needed for a particular job. You should learn at that point in time. But your overall experience will help you how to manage that.
Gopi, anything? Any more questions?
Yeah,
Tejas?
yeah, Gopi.
And Venkat?
No, Gopi can end. Yeah.
Yeah, I think let's close it. Venkat, you want to conclude the?
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, ma'am. I before concluding, I have this one question. That's the most important question that I have. That is, with regards to the selection of IAS officers, I see that most of the national-minded people are not getting into the service, but rather the left-leaning, center-left-leaning, they make it into the top services nowadays. Like example, Shah Faisal. There are several officers like that who get into the service and do injustice to. They actually milk the entire system and then resign, and then they blame the society, blame the country, and then they quit.
Okay,
Why is it?
see, they have a goal, so they know that by penetrating the civil service, they can fulfill their goals. They can achieve their objectives. Why such a spirit is not there with the national-minded people? You want to go abroad and work in America, US. Okay, now why don't you also get into service, Venkat?
A good question, ma'am. I have.
That's what I told you. IAS gives you a great opportunity to serve the society. So why not people who are national minded, who are patriotic, they should enter the service. Today you are paid well, and till 60 you can be in your service, your takes care of your future. So what is your problem? You should join. But you are also always looking for greener pastures and blaming here. That is why inefficient service. Yeah.
The problem is with the filtering system in the UPSC. I can give you several examples.
I'm very sorry. If you see the kind of people who are coming through the UPSC, you will know ordinary people, they could have never influenced anybody. You take any IAS officer, nobody, you don't even know whom to go and approach in this thing. State service, it happens, but not in the UPSC. I'm very sorry. It doesn't happen. The system is foolproof. That is why you will not see majority of the officers you will find, they have a very ordinary background.
That is the point. That is not the point, ma'am. I'm saying that there are 3 points. First is there is total secrecy regarding the mains exam. Who evaluates it? What is the score? Who determines which is the correct answer, which is the wrong answer? Say, for example, 2009, there are several questions that are like a deliberate trap questions for national-minded people to get filtered out. Example, 2019 question, they said, how does the Indian cultural values is getting affected due to secularism? That was with after the Sabarimala issue happened in 2019 mains CSE, and all those people who had written that example, we know what happened. In fact, there are people in.
I think you have this conspiracy theory working in your mind, Venkat, because I know you personally also. You always think that there is something that is not true, because these questions papers are corrected different places. Nobody knows who has written that answer. Based on that answer, a decision is not taken. Okay, you know where which exam in India, which other exam you write, IIT exam, you did your engineering. Anybody tells you your score, and do they show your question, your answer paper? No. It's not like that. Don't demean the people who have got into the service. No, it's very wrong.
It is not demeaning the services or the people who have got into it.
Only those people with influence are getting in and all that. No, that's not correct.
No, ma'am. I'm saying that those people who evaluate have a leading.
No. I'm sorry. I think.
Let's wind it up.
It's not asking based on your question. No, nobody knows who has written that answer. Okay, it's not true.
I think I'll take over the Venkat then. Thank you, ma'am. On behalf of VHS Karnataka, I thank Chandralekha ma'am for accepting our request and enlightening on the relevance of bureaucracy in the post-liberalization era. I mean, it's more of a real samvada where she has answered all the questions rather, and in a very fair way. And thank you, madam, for answering all our questions and clarifying it. Personal questions as well. And I thank Nikunji,
Tejas and Sudhindra.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All
And
the
last
viewers.
but not, and thank you, Ishwara Ayarji. Thank you, Rakesh, who are working from behind the scene. And last but not the least, thank you all the wonderful viewers for supporting us and making this Samvada very successful. So please stay safe, and please do visit and register at vhsindia.org for further amazing online sessions on VHS Samvada. Please do register. Thank you all. Jai Sri Ram.
Thank
Jai
you
Shri
very
Ram.
much.
Thank
Jai
you.
Shri Ram. Chala, good. Please, Tejas.
Tejas, we're still live. We're still live. And Nikunj, I think let's leave and come. Venkat, we can leave and come.